Hello and welcome to the Understanding and Supporting Anxiety workshops for parents and carers. My name is Adam Harvey and I'm an education mental health practitioner working for Calderdale's Mental Health Support Team, or MHST, which is a part of North Point. The MHST is based in 49 schools across Calderdale and has three main roles. We support children and young people with mild to moderate mental health problems by delivering low-intensity, evidence-based interventions, mostly around anxiety and low mood. We also work with our schools to develop the whole approach to mental health and well-being, which can involve a wide range of things, including delivering workshops like this. The final part of our role is to give timely signposting advice to school staff, as well as working with external agencies to provide the right support for young people and their families. So, thinking about the aims for this session, hopefully by the end you'll be able to understand what anxiety is and to know its key features in children and young people. You'll also be able to identify how anxiety impacts on our bodies, our thoughts and our behaviours. Lastly, I will share with you some practical strategies that you can use with your young person to help reduce their anxiety. So let's start by talking about the difference between worry and anxiety. Worry is completely normal. At some point, everyone experiences worry. It can often be a useful tool helping us to solve problems. Anxiety is slightly different and is more when we cannot let go of those worries and we find ourselves worrying about lots of different things all of the time, or when those worries begin to impact on our day-to-day lives. Let's start to look at anxiety in depth. Anxiety is our body's defense mechanism. As I mentioned before, it helps to keep us safe as our brain responds to dangerous or stressful situations and prepares our bodies to react by releasing a number of different chemicals, such as adrenaline. This is often called the fight, flight, freeze response, or FFF for short. This FFF response then causes some of the physical symptoms associated with anxiety, such as feeling sick, headaches, sweating, or shaking. This is always a really good thing to try and understand about your young person, as it is different for each of us, and even young children can often tell you they feel sick, for example, letting you know that there is something going on for them if you know they aren't actually physically ill. An activity that can be quite fun and informative to try with your young person can be around the backpack analogy. You will need a backpack, some rocks, and some post-it notes. Ask your young person to write down on each post-it note a worry they currently have and then stick these on the rocks. Then put these rocks in the backpack and ask your young person to put it on. The backpack will likely be quite heavy, and the idea is to talk to your young person about how this is the weight that they are carrying around all day, every day. It can be quite powerful as it helps to validate some of those feelings. We know anxiety is tough and can have a big emotional and physical impact on our young people. You could then share that if they want some support, either from yourself or perhaps from professionals such as our team, it can help to reduce their worries and lighten the load and pressure on them. The FFF response that I mentioned earlier developed millions of years ago in mammals. It also evolved in humans, and we have this innate ability found within the amygdala part of our brain. Our ancient ancestors needed to forage daily for food just to stay alive. They regularly came face to face with animals that would want to kill them, meaning that the FFF response was essential to keep them safe, allowing them to fight or run away with that additional boost of adrenaline. However, our society has evolved much quicker than our bodies. Luckily, most of us now don't worry about life-threatening situations anymore. However, the daily stresses in some of our young people's lives, like going to school or dealing with peer pressure, still provoke the same kind of reaction. One way of looking at the FFF response is a fire alarm. Our body detects if there is a threat, and this helps get us out of danger. However, we all know that a smoke alarm doesn't always go off when there is actual danger. It can go off when you burn your toast, for example. It still has the same reaction, but the threat isn't dangerous. Our anxiety can become like a faulty smoke alarm, where we are triggered by what we perceive as danger, even though it's highly unlikely or isn't really there. The hand-brain model is a really good way of thinking about the brain's reaction to stress and worry that you can share with your young person. It was created by Dr. Dan Siegel, who is a psychiatrist. His idea was to use our hands to picture and demonstrate how the brain works. You can Google images of this model to get a better idea of how it works, but essentially there are three main parts to the brain. If you hold your hand up like you are about to wave at somebody with your thumb tucked in against it, we can go through this together. The brain stem is represented by your wrist, and this part of the brain controls the behaviors we need to survive, such as essential body functions like digestion, breathing, and movement. The limbic system is represented by your palm and is known as the emotional part of our brain. Your thumb is the main part of the emotional brain, which is the amygdala. This is responsible for the FFF response. I think of the amygdala as the jumpy superhero is trying to act in a way to keep us safe, but it might be too responsive. The cortex, which is represented by your fingers, is known as the thinking part of our brains. It is responsible for higher order thinking skills such as empathy, planning, reasoning, and problem solving, which are all skills we need for learning. Now, if you fold your fingers over your thumb and palm, this demonstrates that the emotional and thinking parts of the brain are working together because the thumb and fingers are connected. When this happens, our thinking brain is online and is able to plan, reason, problem solve, or reflect. Information comes in and is processed logically. I think of it as the thinking brain hugging the emotional brain and making it feel safe. If you now flip your fingers up straight away from the thumb and palm, this is what happens in our brains when we are feeling dysregulated, stressed, and anxious. The emotional and thinking parts of the brain are no longer working together. The fingers and thumb aren't connected. The emotional brain is in charge. It has hijacked the thinking brain, and logic no longer has an influence over our emotions. This means we are simply responding instinctively in the moment. This is what Dr. Siegel calls flipping our lid. Sharing this with your young person can help them better understand what is going on for them, as well as helping them to realize that when they are in this flipped out state, they need to take the time to calm down so that they can begin to listen calmly to others or be in a place to learn. There are often different causes of a child's anxiety, with it unlikely to be one specific thing. It is often a combination of factors, and as you can see from the information on the slide, these can be wide-ranging. Environmental factors are one of the more common causes of anxiety. These can include traumatic events, loss or death, separation, and bullying. Specific fears can also lead to a child becoming more generally anxious. Specific fears are things like being afraid of dogs, spiders, snakes, or flying, for example. The science is still not entirely clear as we have a lot to learn, but it is believed that childhood anxiety is partly made up by genetics, perhaps around a third, with the rest likely generated through other factors, probably largely environmental. A temperamental disposition can also be a factor in a child becoming anxious, with children who are especially sensitive to touch or sound often more likely to develop some form of anxiety. Sometimes the uncertainty caused by having to do something new or being pushed out of our comfort zone can be a factor, whilst we can also develop fears by learning behaviours from others. As an example of this last point, if we think about a child that has never been to the dentist before, but sees the adult in their lives ranting about a dental appointment they have, the adult may say how awful the dentist is, that they will pull out their teeth or that they will be in pain for weeks. The adult might decide to ring up and cancel the appointment before eating lots of chocolate to help them feel better. What the young person learns from this is that the dentist is something to be worried about and scared of, and that we can avoid things that make us anxious. They also learn unhelpful coping strategies, such as that eating lots of chocolate will help us manage difficult feelings and cope with things. I fully appreciate that it can be very difficult not to pass our own fears on to our young people, but it is important to try and be aware of what they can learn from us. With all of this said, it can sometimes be hard to determine what may have led to a child becoming more anxious. And actually, as we talk about when we work with both young people and parents, when it comes to mild to moderate anxiety, it is often more important to focus on what we can do to reduce the anxiety rather than what caused it in the first place. As I'm sure a lot of you know, our thoughts can be incredibly powerful things, sometimes making it very difficult to challenge them or to see an alternative view. One of the ways our thoughts can make life difficult is when we develop what are called negative thinking styles or thought traps. I won't talk through all of these negative ways of viewing the world, but I will highlight just a few of the most common. The first, predicting, always has a negative outcome and makes us feel very anxious about doing something as we assume the result will be bad. Another thought trap, overgeneralization, can mean that one negative or scary experience can result in us assuming that it will always be that way, or that that thing will always happen. Should statements are also a difficult thought trap to have, as they often lead to us viewing ourselves in a negative way, because we are setting ourselves up to fail by saying we should be able to do this or that without being realistic about a situation. Lastly, mind reading can be a dangerous one to fall into, as it means we believe we know what others are thinking, most likely making negative assumptions about their thoughts and how they feel towards us. Being aware of these thinking patterns can be the first step in recognizing our negative thoughts and allowing us to challenge them with the right strategies, which we will talk about later. One way of thinking about how anxiety can be maintained is with the anxiety cycle. Basically, the idea is that somebody feels worried or anxious, and this leads them to avoid whatever it is that has caused this. In the short term, this makes them feel better. However, in the long term, their anxiety gets worse, and the next time they are faced with the same situation, they feel even more worried. The key part of this cycle is avoidance, which is a form of safety behavior. These are essentially any behaviors that someone feeling anxious does to help them cope with their anxiety. However, safety behaviors often actually keep the anxiety going, as the person doesn't get the chance to find out that their anxiety will reduce over time. Safety behaviors can be really important to look out for in your young person, as if you can help them to notice these and to reduce them, or even stop them completely over time, this can have a significant impact on their level of anxiety. There are three main types of safety behavior, which are avoidance, reassurance, and unhelpful coping strategies. I wanted to give you some examples of each so that you have a better idea of what to look out for. When it comes to avoidance, this can be of people or places. It could perhaps be only going somewhere at certain times or with certain people. It could be staying at home to completely avoid going somewhere, or it might be escaping or leaving early from a situation that is stressful. Reassurance seeking is probably quite self-explanatory and something that we see more in younger children, though it is still common in many young people who feel anxious. Reassurance seeking could be done by asking lots of questions and needing reassurance about things like whether they've got something right or understood something. It could be repeatedly asking what the plans are or timings, and it can also be visual as well, where the young person repeatedly looks at a timetable, for example, to double check things. Finally, unhelpful coping strategies are things like avoiding eye contact, social situations in general, or talking in front of people. It could be always needing someone or something in order to do something. I just wanted to make you aware of some of the warning signs to look out for in your young people that could suggest something may be going on for them. I won't read through the list, as it's probably easier for you to pause the video and read through at your own pace. However, just to say that this is not an exhaustive list. Your young person may be displaying some, all, or none of these, but some of these things may also indicate other concerns. Therefore, we would always recommend having a conversation with them to explore it a little more and seeking professional help if you have any concerns. Lastly, just to mention phobias, which are not on the list. In order for these to be considered something that needs support, they would need to be having an impact on functioning and daily life. Right, let's start to look at different strategies you can use with your young person to support them to hopefully reduce their anxiety. Now that you are hopefully feeling more knowledgeable about what anxiety is and how it presents in our young people, I wanted to discuss the best ways to support them. Before I do, however, it is really important to say that you do not need to support a young person alone. Please speak to your school and ask for support at whatever point you feel you need to. It is also essential to be mindful of your own well-being and mental health. You need to be feeling resilient and well yourself to support someone else's mental health and well-being. If we take the example of an oxygen mask on a plane, it is vital that you put your own on first to allow you to better help someone else with theirs. So, when it comes to supporting a young person struggling with anxiety, you have already taken a great first step with the start of this workshop, as it is important to understand anxiety and the impact it can have. Being able to listen and empathise is key, with comments like, "That sounds really difficult for you," going a long way to making your young person feel like you have really heard and understood them. Asking open questions helps your young person to feel like you really want to be in the conversation and encourages them to open up. You could try using rating scales to help you get a better idea of how much their feelings are impacting them. So, for example, on a scale of 1 to 10, how intense is your worry? Encouraging bravery and rewarding it can be a powerful way of reducing a young person's anxiety, especially in primary age children. An approach that we take in some of our anxiety interventions is called graded exposure. This means slowly and carefully exposing your young person to a feared or avoided situation. I'll share an example of how to go about this later on in the session. It's also important to be aware of your own responses to your young person, especially around trying not to overly reassure, which can be an easy trap for a parent to fall into. A big part of helping young people feel a bit safer and less worried about their own anxiety can be to normalize anxiety for them. Try to talk about it and name the feelings, both for your own and theirs if they are struggling to do so. If your young person is happy for you to, you could try to get others involved to provide different viewpoints, ideas, and opportunities for support. Lastly, try and spend some time thinking about the function of the behaviour that your young person is displaying. Behaviour is always a form of communication, and working out why a young person is behaving in a certain way can go a long way to helping them. This first suggestion is for worry monsters, which is great for primary age children. However, it is also a very creative and personalised task, so it could be done with any age if they are happy to try it. Alongside hopefully being a nice creative activity for you to do together, it is also a good opportunity to discuss worry with your child and to normalise it for them. You can use anything to create the worry monster in the first place, from shoe boxes to tissue boxes or parcel boxes. Then encourage your child to be as creative as they like to decorate it and make it really personal. Once it's finished, agree where your child would like it to go in the house and that they will then write down their worries and put them in the box. Doing so will help them to let go of some worries, whilst also allowing you to gain a better idea of the things that are affecting them. It's really important to check the box each day so you're aware of what they are worrying about and can support them as quickly as possible. You could even make a contract with your child where it agrees something like that the box will be checked daily by you, or that you will do it together at a certain time each day or week. It is also good to clear it out regularly, perhaps letting your child throw away each worry once it has been talked about and dealt with if necessary. As I mentioned earlier, one of the techniques to help your child could be to use graded exposure. One way of doing this is by using an exposure ladder, which is designed to encourage bravery and to help your child to face their fears. There is a sheet with a ladder on you could use in the workshop pack. The idea is to set an ultimate goal, which is whatever you and your young person agree they want to aim to be able to do. For example, to be able to speak in front of class. You then look to create different smaller steps on each rung of the ladder that gradually works towards the main goal. It is best to start with something easy that they can already do to help them build their confidence. Then the other steps should be small and achievable. Don't look to plan in too many steps. We suggest a maximum of about 10 is usually enough, but less is okay. Remember to only move on to the next step when they are confident with the step that they are on. When your child starts any new step, it can be really powerful to speak to them beforehand to get an idea of what it is they are worried about and what they predict will happen. It is worth making a note of these, as afterwards it is really important to reflect with them about what actually happened, looking back at hopefully the positive difference between their expectations and the reality. To give you an example of how this might look in practice, let's think about the example of speaking in front of the class. A first step might be to just answer the register when their name is called. The next step could be something like answering a question in a small group before perhaps reading in that small group. The next one could be to answer a question in front of the whole class before finally reading in front of the whole class. This is just one example, but hopefully it gives you an idea of how it could work for your young person. Just as a last point, if you find your young person is struggling with any steps, don't go backwards to a previous step, but try to break it down into several smaller steps. This action plan is a great way of dealing with the worry a young person cannot work out what to do with or how to go about letting it go. The sheet should be relatively self-explanatory, but just take the time to work through each step with your young person. You know them and their capabilities best, but try to allow them to do as much of it themselves where possible. This really helps them to take ownership of the action plan and achieving it. Start by encouraging them to describe the worry before identifying who could help them with it, and then working out the best solutions and coping strategies that will hopefully help them to complete it. When someone is worrying or worked up about something, it can be really easy for their mind to get carried away. Some simple mindfulness and breathing exercises can help them to calm down again and stop the runaway train of thoughts. If you feel that your young person needs more support, there are lots of different services available in Calderdale. The Open Minds website is a good place to begin, as it has loads of great resources and advice for your young person to support their mental health and well-being. It also has information and links to the other available services. On this slide, you'll see lots of these services along with a brief description of what they do. Over the next few slides, I'll just briefly mention a few services within Calderdale that are particularly good for young people. Silver Cloud is a brilliant digital service available to young people and their families within Calderdale. It is an online self-help tool that offers different programs focusing on low mood and anxiety, as well as a new program around ADHD. A referral is required to use Silver Cloud, but 12-month access to the specific program will be offered quickly, which also provides a weekly supporter for the first 6 weeks. You can use Silver Cloud whenever you want, with each program offering information, advice, and practical strategies. Thank you so much for watching and listening to this video about understanding and supporting anxiety. Hopefully it has been useful and you have gained both a better understanding of anxiety and how to support your young person. Please remember that you do not have to do it alone. There are lots of different support services out there to help you and your young person. Speak to somebody at school for advice or contact your GP. There are other videos available from Northpoint on different topics to do with young people's mental health and well-being, so please look out for these or attend one of our face-to-face or online workshops. Your child's school is the best place to find out information about what is available. Thank you again for your time.